Masechet Avoda Zara, Daf Mem Bet. We begin Ve'en Safek Mosi Mideh Vadai. On the previous daf, we saw a principle that was established that if you have a vadai, a certainty, something happens that creates an assumption that's a certainty, you know for sure, then we have to follow that assumption, that status, until another certainty comes and changes it. But if you have a certain status and then an uncertainty comes, a doubt, 50-50 that it changed or didn't change, then you still have to follow the certainty. A safek is not going to change the status from a vadai. If it was vadai and a new vadai comes, that can change the status. If you had a safek that created one status and now a second safek, yes, a safek is powerful enough to overrun a safek, but a safek cannot override a vadai. That was the principle. We brought one challenge to this on the previous stuff, and now we're going to have another challenge. V'hatanya, Amar Rabbi Yehuda ma'aseh b'shivchato shel mesik echad berimon shetila nefel labor. A Braita says in the name of Rabbi Yehuda that there was a certain incident of a maidservant who has to follow Jewish law, of a violent person who is in Rimon. And she had a miscarriage, and she took this newborn and threw it into a pit as a burial, to get rid of it. Now a Kohen passed by, and a Kohen wanted to examine to see if that stillborn was a boy or a girl. He wanted to know that so that he would be able to inform this shivcha, the mother, of her tum'ah status. If it's a boy or a girl, that will make her tameh for 7 days or 14 days, and then subsequently days of tahara for another 33 days or 66 days. And so he went and peered over into the pit to see if what it was. Apparently he was not able to see much, but he did try. Now the question is, what's the tahor status of that kohen? Not a great idea for a kohen to be peering over a pit with a possible dead body in it, because then the kohen will become tameh. So this case came before Chachamim and to ask, what is the status of this kohen? He peered over it, and they said he is tahor, even though he hovered over a corpse, which is an ohel. If there was definitely a corpse there, then surely he would be tameh. Why did they say he's tahor? Because there are martens and polecats common there, and if there's a dead body, they will drag it away. Okay, so therefore, most likely they dragged away this stillborn, and when he peered over, he didn't see much because there was no body there, and we can assume that, and therefore they said he is tahor. Now let's analyze. Here we have a case of a status that is set forth by a certainty. We know for sure that the mother put the stillborn there. So for sure there's a dead body in this pit. Now, we don't know for sure whether a polecat came and dragged it away, or maybe not. Maybe it left it there. And yet, the rabbi said that the kohen is tahor, that this uncertainty can override the certain status. Certainly there was a dead body there. Maybe it was taken away, and yet we follow the maybe to override the certainty. So we see a counterexample to the rule that we had proposed. That's the question. The answer is La tema hitila nefel labor, ela ema hitila kemi nefel labor. No, don't say that the story was that she put a stillborn baby into the pit, but rather she put something that is like a newborn into it. In other words, she had some kind of miscarriage, and it's not clear if that miscarriage was, in fact, of an infant, or it was just congealed blood, maybe just the sac that was not full of blood or other things. It was just tissue, but it was not a formed embryo, and therefore it would not be a dead body, it would not have corpse impurity at all. So she threw something into the pit, so actually we start off with a safek. And so we have a safek. Maybe it was a tameh as a dead body there, maybe not. And even if it was, maybe it was dragged away. And so in this case, a safek can override the previous safek. That's why they told him it's tahor. Hold on, but the Kohen looked to see if it was male or female. Doesn't that indicate that it was, in fact, a baby? Hachika amar, leda im ruach hipila im nefel hitila, im timsa lomar nefel hitila, leda im zachar im nekeba. Explain the story this way. He wanted to go find out whether she miscarried something that's full of wind, maybe just an embryonic sac that's full of air, or some full of other tissues or congealed blood. Was it that, or was it in fact a baby? That's number one that he wanted to see. Is it even a dead body? And if it is a dead body, then is it a boy or a girl? So he didn't know, the Kohen didn't know that for sure it was a stillborn baby. Or another answer to the question altogether. Since there are martins and polecats common there, for sure they dragged it away. There's no chance that they didn't. They see immediately they're going to sense it and they're going to take it away. And therefore, in that case, it would be a vadai. That is motzi mideh vadai. We can even say now that for sure she miscarried a baby and put it there, but we know for sure that once it was there for a little while, then surely something took it away, and therefore that's why we can assume that the Kohen is tahor. Okay, so we conclude that discussion. That whole discussion was itself a tangent for a machloket that we were discussing between Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish about something that broke from an idolatrous statue. If we have a statue that we know was served as an idol, so when it's intact, certainly it's prohibited. But now it broke by accident on its own. Nobody broke it on purpose. The law's breaking on purpose is that if a non-Jew owns it and breaks it on purpose, or even a non-Jew even breaks someone else's a statue, then it is canceled, it's nullified. The non-Jew has the ability, by breaking it, to cancel its status. He's not treating it as an idol anymore, and then it's not prohibited to get benefit from anymore. That's if a non-Jew makes it nullified. If a Jew owns it, it's not sufficient for a Jew to break it. It still does not become nullified. A Jew would have to destroy it and get rid of it. You cannot have any benefit even from the pieces of it. So that's for sure. That's the law when someone breaks it on purpose. But what about if it just falls, just by mistake, by accident, on its own? That was subject to a machloket, where Rabbi Yochanan said, if it breaks on its own, it's because nobody had in mind, a non-Jew didn't have in mind to nullify it, it still has the status of an idol, and maybe somebody would still worship it. And so it's still prohibited, like that statue of Dagon that he brought a proof from. Resh Lakish says, no. Once it's broken, the non-Jew will say, the idolater will say, look at this idol. It couldn't even save itself. It's going to save me. And so when it breaks on its own, the non-Jew, the idolater also nullifies it, and therefore it's permitted to get benefit from the pieces of it. That was the machloket, and we already began a series of questions against Resh Lakish, and now we're going to continue with that series of questions, a number of challenges against Resh Lakish, and we will end with one challenge actually against Rabbi Yochanan. Here we go. Itibeh. Masa tabnit yad, tabnit regel, hare elu asurin. Bipnei shekayose bahen ne'avad. Amai, ha-shevarim ninhu. This question is from the continuation of our Mishnah that says, if one finds a figure of a hand or a figure of a foot, those are prohibited to get benefit from, because there are things like that people do worship. Sometimes usually people worship a whole statue of a whole being, a whole king, but sometimes they make just a foot or just a hand, and those things are worshipped. So this item, maybe it is worshipped. Now we ask, why? Isn't this a fragment off of a bigger statue? And so this makes sense according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says a fragment from an idol is prohibited. But according to Resh Lakish, he says a fragment from an idol is permitted. So why is a foot or a hand prohibited? And the answer is, Hatargema Shemuel be'omdin al besisan. We already answered this question. Shemuel explained that this is talking about a case where the foot or the hand is on a pedestal, meaning it was made initially just as a foot or just as a hand. Sometimes they don't have enough money to build a whole statue. They make just a foot or a hand, and they worship that. And so it's not a fragment that broke from something else. That is the statue itself, and that's why everybody would agree, Resh Lakish included, it's not a fragment, this is the idol itself. Next challenge. Goy mebatel avoda zara shelo v'shel habero. V'Yisrael eno mebatel avoda zara shel goy. Amai tevek avoda zara shenishtabera me'eleha. A Mishnah that's coming up a little bit later says that a non-Jew can cancel, nullify his own idol or an idol that belongs to someone else. He can take that idol and say, this is not an idol anymore, break it, and then that's no longer an idol. However, a Jew cannot nullify an idol of a non-Jew. He doesn't have the power to do that. Now we ask, why does the Mishnah think that a Jew cannot nullify an idol of someone else? Shouldn't it be at least as good as an idol that breaks on its own? Right here you have a human being, it's a Jew, that is actively nullifying it, having in mind, I'm nullifying this thing. And yet, the Mishnah says it's still prohibited. So if someone who is actively doing that does not make, a Jew who actively nullifies something does not make it nullified, then certainly if it breaks on its own, and it's not anyone active that's nullifying it, certainly that should also be prohibited. That makes sense for it to be Yochanan. As a challenge to Resh Lakish, how could Resh Lakish understand it? We're going to have two answers. Amar Abaye she pesachaha. We're talking about a case where the Jew didn't break it. If in fact he broke it, that would be okay. We're talking about a case where the Jew just bent it out of shape. Because he bent it out of shape, so maybe the non-Jew will come and say, it's not totally broken, and may still worship it. So it's not sufficient. Wait a second. And so what if he bent it out of shape? Why would that make it still prohibited? We have another Mishnah that says that if a non-Jew bends an idol out of shape, even if he didn't remove any part of it, he didn't break any part off, still that's considered nullified. So bending out of shape does nullify something. So we explain that is only if a non-Jew bends it out of shape. If a non-Jew bends it out of shape, that's showing that he's not treating it with respect anymore. He's nullifying, he's bending out of shape, he's not treating it like an idol, then in fact it's nullified. But if a Jew bends it out of shape, the Jew may have in mind that he wants to degrade this thing, but the non-Jew didn't have that in mind, and the non-Jew may pick it up and say, all right, it's a little bent out of shape, but it's still intact, and still may worship it. And so that's why if a Jew bends it out of shape, it's still okay. And so that will go back and explain our Mishnah according to Resh Lakish. Yes, if something breaks, we're talking about breaking and a piece breaks off, then it's permitted because now no non-Jew is going to worship it anymore. He's going to say, look, this thing, this idol couldn't even save itself. It's not going to save me. He's not going to worship it. But if a Jew just bends it out of shape, then it's only bent out of shape a little. So the non-Jew is not necessarily going to say that I'm not going to worship it. He might say, well, it's still intact. So what if it's a little bent and still will worship it? So Resh Lakish can explain the Mishnah in that way. Rava has a different answer, and Rava's answer is going to be very important because we're going to quote it a few more times today. Rava Amar, Le'olam ki pechasa Yisrael nami batla. Rava says, no, I disagree. Even if a Jew bends it out of shape, that would also mean that it's nullified. Now, it doesn't matter. Bending out of shape is the same thing as breaking it. Ella, gezerah dilma magbah la v'hadad mebatel la, v'haveh avoda zara biyad Yisrael, v'chol avoda zara biyad Yisrael ena betela le'olam. Rather, if a Jew nullifies something, takes an idol that he finds that belonged to a non-Jew, and the Jew nullifies it, the reason why it's not nullified is because of a gezerah. Really, midoraita, yes, it can be nullified. But midrabanan, we are afraid that perhaps the Jew will see this idol on the floor that belongs to a non-Jew, and he will pick it up, and first pick it up and acquire it for himself, and only then will he nullify it. And since he picks it up at first, and in the act of picking it up, he acquires it, now it belongs to a Jew. And the rule is that any idol that belongs to a Jew cannot be nullified forever. It can only be nullified if it belongs to a non-Jew. So technically, if it belongs to a non-Jew and the Jew would just like throw something at it and smash it in some way, then that would be in fact be nullified. But the problem is that usually the Jew is going to come pick it up. He might pick it up and say, oh, look at this nice idol. And he has in mind that he's going to acquire it for himself. And only then he nullifies it, but he can't nullify it because he acquired it already. And just in case that happens, doesn't necessarily have to happen. He could just throw something at it, but we have a make a gezerah across the board that a Jew cannot nullify an object of a non-Jew for that reason. That Rava says that's the explanation that Resh Lakish can use for this Mishnah. That's the fundamental difference. If something breaks on its own, so now it's smashed, maybe just from the wind or whatever, it just broke on its own. In that case, the non-Jew will say, it couldn't save itself. It's not going to save me. It's nullified. So an accidental breakage nullifies something. And of course, if an idolater himself breaks it, that certainly nullifies it. But if a Jew breaks it, even if it belongs to a non-Jew, then it's not nullified. And that's the reason, because Rava says, we are afraid that maybe he picks it up, acquires it, and once a Jew acquires it, he can no longer nullify it, because that's the rule. A Jew cannot nullify an idol that's owned by a Jew. Next challenge. Goy shehevi avanim min hamarkulis v'chipa behen derachim v'tarteot mutarot. V'Yisrael shehevi avanim min hamarkulis v'chipa behen derachim v'tarteot asurot. Amai tevek avoda zara shenishtabera me'eleha. A Baraita teaches that if you have a pile of stones that were used to worship Markulis, Mercury, the way to worship this idol was to throw stones at it. That's how you worship the idol. So now you have all these stones that were thrown at it. These stones have the status of idolatry themselves because they were used in an idolatrous service. Okay, so you have these Avoda Zara stones. If a non-Jew takes some of those stones and he uses them to pave a road or to build a theater, he uses them as bricks, in that case, it's permitted. A Jew can get benefit and walk on that road and go into that theater and benefit from those stones. Why? Because a non-Jew nullified them. By taking the stones and using them for a secular purpose, he is nullifying them. That's okay. But if a Jew went and took those stones and used them to build a road or to build a theater, they remain prohibited. We ask about against Resh Lakish. Why, Resh Lakish, would you say, shouldn't this be at least as good as an idol that broke on its own? If an idol that broke on its own is permitted, as you say, Resh Lakish, then all the more so if a Jew came and nullified it by using it to build something, it should also be nullified. We understand this according to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, if it breaks on its own, not good enough. You need an idolater to use it for something else, to break it in order to be nullified. So that's why only an idolater can nullify it, and not if it breaks on its own, and not if a Jew does it. But you, Resh Lakish, say that if it breaks on its own, that's nullified. Then all the more so if a Jew nullifies it, it should be nullified. And the answer is Hachaname Kedirabah. We'll explain according to Rava also. Midoraita, really, in fact, yes, a Jew could also nullify an idol owned by a non-Jew. But Midrabanan, we say, no, we don't want that to happen, just in case the Jew picks it up, acquires it, and then can no longer nullify it. Itive goy sheshipa avoda zara lesorko hi veshipuyeha mutarin lesorka hi asura veshipuyeha mutarin v'Yisrael sheshipa avoda zara ben lesorko ben lesorka hi veshipuyeha asurin amai tevek avoda zara shenishtabera me'eleha. Challenge from another Braita that says, if an idolater shaves down an idol, if an idol, maybe it's made out of wood, and he shaves it down because he wants the shavings, he wants to use it to make a fire or something, then the shavings and the idol itself become permitted. Because if he's taking an idol and using it just for shavings, just to use it for firewood, then surely that's nullifying the whole thing. However, if he's shaving it down for the sake of the idol itself, to make it look nicer, smoothing it out, and then the idol remains prohibited because he still considers it like an idol. In fact, he's improving it. Although the shavings are permitted because that's just waste. And so he took that off, and by doing that, he's nullifying the shavings. That's if an idolater does it. If a Jew shaves off from an idol, then it doesn't matter whether he's doing it because he wants the shavings or whether he's doing it to help the idol. The shavings and the idol are prohibited because this thing belongs to a non-Jew, and this fits with the principle that a Jew does not have the power to nullify an idol owned by a non-Jew. We ask against Resh Lakish, why would he not have the power? If it broke on its own, that would be nullified. So certainly, if it's broken, shaved by a Jew, it should also be nullified. That's the challenge, and the answer, Hachaname kid Rava. You can use Rava also, and in fact, midoraita, the Jew would have the ability to nullify it, but midrabanan, we're afraid that he's going to pick it up and acquire it, and then he cannot nullify it because at that point it's owned by a Jew. Itibe, Rabbi Yosef Omer, shochek vezore la ruach o matil layam. Amru lo afi nasa zebel, uchtib lo yidbak biyadecha me'uma min hacherem. Amai, tevek avoda zara, shenishtabera me'eleha. A challenge against Resh Lakish from a Mishnah. That's coming up on the next staff. Rabbi Yosef says that if you have an idol, how do you destroy it? You can grind it up and throw it into the wind or throw it into the sea. That's how Rabbi Yosef says, that's what you do. Interestingly, if it reminds you of Chametz on Pesach, that he also mentions the same way to get rid of Chametz. It's no coincidence, Chametz that you're getting rid of before Pesach is similar to Avoda Zara, is symbolically similar. Okay, anyway, the sages told Rabbi Yosef, no, we disagree. You can't just throw it into the wind because then it will turn into fertilizer. If the idol is made out of some organic material and you mush it up and throw it, grind it up and throw it into the wind, it's going to land on the ground, on the field, and will help things grow, and then you're getting benefit. And the Torah says nothing of the prescribed item shall cleave to your hand, meaning you cannot get any benefit at all from it. So it's not good to throw it into the wind. Now we ask, according to Resh Lakish, why would you say that that's not good enough? Is it not at least as good as an idol that broke on its own? If an idol that broke on its own is permitted, which it is according to you, Resh Lakish, where there was no intention there, then all the more so if a Jew takes it and grinds it up and throws it into the wind, shouldn't that all certainly nullify it? And therefore, it's okay to get benefit from the little pieces because it's nullified. It's not an idol anymore. How do you answer that? Hachaname kid Rava. We will answer also according to Rava that we are afraid that the Jew will pick it up and acquire it first, and once you acquire it, and then even if you grind it up and all that, a Jew cannot nullify an idol that he owns. Itibeh, another challenge from a Baraita. Rabbi Yosef ben Yasian Omer, Masa surat derakon verosho hatuch, Safek goy chatacho, Safek Yisrael chatacho mutar, Vadai Yisrael chatacho asur, Amai, Tevek avoda zara, shenishtabera me'eleha. A Baraita teaches that Rabbi Yosef, the son of Yasian, says, if someone finds a figure of a dragon, which was worshipped as an idol, and its head is cut off, which is going to make it nullified. But we're not sure, did an idolater cut it off, or did a Jew cut it off? If you're not sure which one it is, then it's permitted to use. But if you know that a Jew cut its head off, then it's prohibited. Why is it prohibited? Shouldn't it be at least as good as something falling on its own? If it fell off a table by mistake on its own, then you would say it's nullified. So if a Jew cut it off, then certainly it should be nullified. According to Resh Lakish, we answer Hachaname ked Rava. We answer like Rava. If some wind pushed it off the table and it broke, then it's nullified because no non-Jew would worship it. It would say it can't worship it. It can't save itself. It's not going to save me. I'm not going to worship it. But if a Jew picks it up and acquires it, then it belongs to the Jew, and a Jew cannot nullify something that is owned by himself. Iti be Rabbi Yosef Omer, Af lo yirakot bimot geshamim, mipnei shehanebiya nosheret alehen. Amai tevek avoda zara shenishtabera me'eleha. Another challenge against Resh Lakish. We're not going to be able to use the answer of Rava for this one. Here in a Braita, Rabbi Yosef says, one is not allowed to plant vegetables, not even in the rainy season, under a tree that is an idolatrous tree. In the summer season, you can't because it has shade that's giving to the things that are growing, so that for sure is not good. And the Rabbi Yosef is saying, not even in the winter time, because in the wintertime, the leaves are going to fall, and those fallen leaves will act as fertilizer and help the thing grow. And you can't get benefit from anything idolatrous, not even the leaves that fall onto your growing vegetables. We ask, according to Resh Lakish, why would it not be allowed? Shouldn't it be the same as an idol that broke on its own? Here, the tree is prohibited. We understand the tree is prohibited. But here you have a leaf that's falling. That's the same as a piece of an idol that fell off on its own. And Resh Lakish, you said that, let's say a finger of an idol, fell off. That's permitted because that's considered nullified. No idolater worship anymore. So here you have a leaf of an idolatrous tree fell off. That's it. It's broken off, so it should be okay. Why is it Yosef say it's prohibited? No, that's different because there the main idol still exists. The tree stays intact. It's going to grow new leaves. The tree is still going to be worshipped. That's different from an idol where if something comes and the idol falls off the table and smashes or whatever, something goes by and it knocks its arm off, so then the idol is not intact anymore. We're going to say, look at this idol. It couldn't save its own arm. I'm not going to worship it. So they would not worship it. But when it comes to a tree, just because a leaf falls off, the tree is still intact. You don't say, hey, what's wrong with this tree? It let a leaf go. And so people would still worship the tree. It's not the same. Hold on, is that principle really true? Remember the case regarding the shavings, where if a non-Jew shaves off a little bit of a statue, maybe it's made out of wood, and the statue itself, the main part of the statue, is still there. And we learned in that Baraita that if you do it for the sake of the statue, you want to improve and make the statue look nicer, the statue is still prohibited, even though the shavings are permitted. So why? Why don't you say that's the same thing? And that here, since the thing is intact, just like the tree, since the tree is intact, so therefore the leaves that fall off are prohibited. So then you should say the same thing here. Because the idol is intact, so therefore the shavings should be prohibited also. But we don't. We say the shavings are permitted because he took them off. So that means he doesn't care about the shavings. So we should say the same thing here, that even though the tree is intact, the leaves should be permitted. And if the leaves are permitted, then you should be able to plant under the tree, even in the winter. Rav Huna bered Rav Yoshua Amar, lefi she'en avoda zara betela derech gedilata. Rav Huna, son of Yoshua, says because of the principle that an idol will not be nullified in its normal manner of growth. This is a normal manner of growth. They have a tree grows big, it's going to have leaves, the leaves are going to fall off. This is since that's the normal natural process, so the tree remains prohibited and the leaves also remain prohibited because that's part of the natural growth. It's seen as natural. The idolater is still going to worship the tree and even the leaves that fall off. That's different from this idol over here, where the non-Jew will worship the idol, but the shavings that one took off because they don't look nice, those he means to throw in the garbage, and therefore they're not idolatrous anymore. Now we turn the tables, and Resh Lakish is going to have a chance to challenge Rabbi Yochanan. Ken sheberosh ha'ilan shel hekdesh lo nehenin velo mo'alin berosha shel ashera yatiz bekaneh. If you have a nest that's on top of a tree, and the tree is hekdesh, so you're not allowed to get any benefit from the hekdesh tree. Interestingly, we're going to compare hekdesh to avodah zara, even though one is holy for Hashem and the other one is idolatry and prohibited. What they have in common is that you can't get benefit, not from hekdesh and not from avodah zara. Okay, so let's compare them. You have this nest that's on top of a tree that's hekdesh. The law is one cannot get benefit from that nest, but if you do, it's not considered me'ilah. It's not considered me'ilah because the nest is not part of the tree. If you would benefit from the tree itself, climb up the tree, take a branch from the tree, then that would be me'ilah mideoraita. But the nest is not technically part of the tree. It's not attached to the tree. Therefore, there's no me'ilah. However, midrabanan, the rabbis say, no, it's going to look like you're benefiting from the tree. You may come to benefit from the tree. Therefore, leave the nest alone. That's regarding hekdesh. If it's, however, on the top of an asherah tree, then you can take a pole and knock the nest off, and you can benefit from the nest and the contents of the nest, the eggs or the chicks that are inside the nest. You can't climb up the asherah tree because you're not allowed to get benefit from it, but you can climb up. That is what the Mishnah in Masechet Me'ilah teaches. Now, what is the case? At first, we're reading this Mishnah as talking about a case where the bird broke off branches from the tree itself. You have an asherah tree, and the bird went and took branches off of that tree to build the nest with. And even though the branches are from the tree, nevertheless, it says they're detached from it. And so you can go and knock off the nest and take the nest for yourself and benefit from it. That is a proof for Resh Lakish, that something that is broken off of an idol, that it's broken off on its own through a natural process, and here it's by a bird, so it's no person that is intentionally nullifying it. This is just happening on its own, and it's permitted. A good proof for Resh Lakish challenged to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, how are you going to answer this? Rabbi Yochanan said that something that falls off or breaks from an idol remains prohibited. Here you have branches that came from an idolatrous tree, but they are permitted. How will you explain this? And the answer for Rabbi Yochanan is, we're talking about a case where the bird got branches from other trees and he put them on top of this tree and he built a nest with it. And so the nest itself is permitted because they came from other trees. And this is not just a difficult answer, but is actually precise with the wording, because the katana gabe hekdesh, in the case of hekdesh, look at the wording. Lo nehenin velo mo'alin. You can't benefit from it midoraita, but you can't benefit from it midrabanan, but you don't violate it mideoraita. Iamat bishlama daite sime alma, hainu tekatan negebe hekdesh, lo nehenin velo mo'alin, lo nehenin midrabanan velo mo'alin mideoraita, taha la kadishe. If you say that the bird got twigs from elsewhere, then it makes sense the ruling that the Mishnah said regarding hekdesh, that you cannot get benefit, but you also don't commit me'ilah if you do. You cannot benefit from it midrabanan, because it is on top of a hekdesh tree, so we want you to stay away from the tree, midrabanan gezerah, but it's not me'ilah mideoraita, because after all, these branches are not holy. They got the branches from a different tree, so the nest itself on the deoraita level is not hekdesh, and that's why there's no me'ilah. So you see, this answer makes sense. But if you would say, as you were thinking at the question stage, that the bird broke off trees from this very hekdesh tree to make the nest, amaylo ma'alin hakadisheh, then why would you not be committing me'ilah? These branches are from a consecrated tree, so they are consecrated branches, and then it would be me'ilah. So this answer that we gave for Rabbi Yochanan is a correct answer, and we challenge that proof. Midi iria, wait, is that the same? Hacha begidulin habain lachar mikan askinan bekasabad and me'ilah begidulin. It could be that we're talking about a case where the bird, in fact, made the nest from branches of that tree itself. However, these are branches that grew after it was made hekdesh, and we're following the opinion that there's no me'ilah in things that grow afterwards. They have a tree. The tree is as it is right now. I say this tree is hekdesh. Everything that's there now becomes hekdesh. According to this opinion, If a new branch grows later on after that, that new branch is not Hekdesh. It grew from Hekdesh, but it was not there when I made the tree Hekdesh, and that branch, therefore, is permitted. And that's what we're talking about, where something grew. So it could be it's talking about a case where, yes, it got twigs from the branch itself, and what you asked, why? How come it's not me'ilah? Because it's a new branch. Rabbi Abu amar Rabbi Yochanan, ma yatiz? Yatiz be'efrochin. Rabbi Abu, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, says a different answer in order to solve this Mishnah for Rabbi Yochanan. He says, when it says you knock it off, it's not talking about knocking off the nest and using the branches of the nest for yourself, but rather knocking off the chicks. The nest, you're right, is prohibited. It's part of the tree itself. It comes from the tree. But rather, you can only benefit from the chicks. And that's how we can explain it according to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, consistent now. Anything that's broken off of an idol is prohibited. And so too, the nest that's broken, that's part of, made from branches from the tree itself, is in fact prohibited. And the Mishnah never said that the nest itself is permitted. All you can do is knock it around so that the chicks fall out, and you can benefit from the chicks, because the chicks are not connected and they are not part of the tree. Amar le Rabbi Yaakov Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Tachlifa, az beralach be'efrochin kan v'kan mutarin, bebesim kan v'kan asurim. Amar Rav Asher efrochin sheshrichin li'iman kebesim damu. Now, just explaining this answer a little further, Rabbi Yaakov tells Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Tachlifa, let me explain to you what it means. Regarding the chicks that can fly away, both here and there, both regard to the Hekdesh tree and the Asherah tree, they're permitted because they can fly away, so they're independent from the tree. They don't need the tree, and so therefore the prohibition on the tree or any benefit from the tree does not apply to the chicks that can fly away and are not dependent on it. But when it comes to the eggs need the tree. Oh, they're not connected, they're not part of the tree, but they need it. And so since they need it, just like you can't climb a tree, even though you're not taking anything away from it, but you need the stability of the tree to climb it, the eggs are dependent for their survival on the tree, so therefore the eggs, both here in Hekdesh and in Asherah tree, are prohibited. And Rav Asher adds further, even the chicks, if they still need their mother, those are like eggs, because they can't just fly away. They need their mother to survive. They need to stay in the nest. So those also would be prohibited, because they're dependent on the Hekdesh tree or the idolatrous tree, and you can't get benefit from them. Only if it's a chick that doesn't need its mother, that can fly away and live on its own, those are the only ones that one can take for oneself. The next Mishnah teaches, Hamoseh kelim v'alehem surat hama, surat levana, surat derakon, yolichem liyam hamelach. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Shal ha-mechubadin asurin, Shal ha-mevuzin mutarin. If someone finds a vessel, notice this word find, he didn't create the vessel, but he goes somewhere and he sees this vessel, and on the vessel is a figure, either of a sun, or the moon, or a dragon. Those three things are worshipped, even as a picture that's painted onto a vessel, and therefore these are objects of Avoda Zara, and you have to take them to the Dead Sea and throw them into the Dead Sea because one cannot get any benefit from them. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, no, actually it depends. If it's on a respectable vessel, like a big drinking goblet, then that is prohibited. They would worship that. But if it's on a disgraceful vessel, like a chamber pot, then what are they doing in that? They're not worshiping it. It's disgraceful. Then it's clearly just a decoration, and therefore it's permitted. Gemara asks, Lemembra de lahani hu de falchelehu lemidi acharina ala. So is this to tell us that people, idolaters, only worship these things, the sun, the moon, and dragon shapes, but other items people don't worship? Urminhi, we have a contradiction from a Mishnah in Masechet Chulin that says Hashochet l'shum yamim, l'shum neharot, l'shum midbar, l'shum hama, l'shum lebana, l'shum kochavim mazalot, l'shum Michael sad hagadol, l'shum shilshul katan, hare elu zibche metim. The Mishnah teaches that if someone slaughters an animal for the sake of worship of seas, rivers, the wilderness, sun, moon, stars, constellations, for Michael, the great ministering angel, or for a small worm, all of these things, that makes that sacrifice Avoda Zara. It's like offering to the dead. Offering to the dead because an idol is like dead, has no power. And so all these are considered idol worship. And so we see from here that people worship all kinds of different things. So how come the Mishnah mentioned that you only have to destroy vessels with these three things, sun, moon, and dragon? What about if a picture of Michael or something else? Amar Abaye, miflach lechol de mishkeche palche, mesar falchi, hanetilata de chashibe, sayiri lehu, falchi lehu, lemidi acharina lenoi be'ama abdi lehu. Abaye explains the answer that in order to worship things, people will worship anything that they find. Idolaters, they see anything that they see, they may go ahead and worship it. That's true. And so therefore that sacrifice that they make to whatever they worship will be prohibited. But as a figure, to draw a figure and worship it, that they only do for these three things that are very important, the sun, the moon, and dragons. There they'll just make a picture and worship the picture. But for other items, sea, they'll worship the river, but they're not going to make a picture of a river and worship it. So if there's just a river painted on something, then that is merely ornamental. Mankit Rav Sheshat Chumre Matniyata Vetaneh. כל המזלות מותרים, חוץ ממזל חמה ולבנה, וכל הפרצופים מותרים, חוץ מפרצוף אדם, וכל הצורות מותרות, חוץ מסורת דרקון. Rav Sheshat took all of the stringencies that we learned in that baraita, and he taught it in a summary fashion by explaining all constellations are permitted. You can't worship the constellations. It means pictures of any constellation or star or any heavenly object is permitted. If you find it painted on a vessel, that vessel is permitted, except for the sun and the moon. That people worship, even the picture of it. And all faces are permitted except for a human face. If you see a face of an animal or something on a vessel, then that vessel is permitted to use. The face there is only ornamental, except for a human face that is worshipped. So this is a new item that was not actually in the previous Braita, but he's adding it into his summary. And furthermore, all figures of items are permitted except for the figure of a dragon. That's the only type of figure that people will worship, even as an image painted onto a vessel. Amar Mor, kol hamazalot mutarin chutz mi mazal chama ulevana. Let's analyze the statement further. You just said that all constellations, pictures of them are permitted, except for the sun and the moon. Hacha b'mayaskinan, ilema be'oseh kol hamazalot misharev haketib, lo tasun iti, lo tasun kidmut shamashayim shamashim lefanai b'maram. So what do you mean that they're all permitted? If you say it means you're permitted to make it, you're permitted to draw a figure of anything in the sky except for the sun and the moon. Is that true, that all constellations are permitted? The pasuk says, you shall not make with me gods of silver or gods of gold, you shall not make for you. With me, meaning besides me, you cannot make pictures of anything. And it continues and says anything that's up in heaven. So that means do not make anything that looks like those things that attend before me. And the things that attend before God includes all of the celestial bodies. They are all serving Hashem by going around and around and doing their thing, all the stars, all the constellations. And so we see here that one cannot make an image of anything in the sky. So if it's talking about creating an image, that applies to everything in the sky. So that can't be what Rav Sheshat is talking about. Ela peshita b'moseh v'cheditnan hamoseh kelim alehem surat chama surat lebana surat darkon yolichem leyam hamelech. Rather, obviously, this when Rav Sheshat is talking about his context, he's talking about if you find an item, like in the Mishnah, that clearly says if you find a vessel, you didn't make it, but you found it there, and it has a sun or a moon and dragon, that you have to destroy. But if you find it and it has something else on it, you find something that has a picture of the North Star, Mars on it, that is okay. That's only for an ornament, and so you don't have to destroy it. You can use it. Although you can't make it, You can't draw it yourself because it says here. So there's a difference between drawing, that applies to everything, if you create it yourself. But if you find it, then you only have to destroy it if it's on a sun and the moon, or a dragon. Okay, so now if you say that Rav Sheshat's statement is talking about something that you find already made, well, look at the middle clause that says all faces are permitted except for a human face. If it's talking about something that you found, so if you find something, a vessel, has a human face on it, is that prohibited? But the Our Mishnah says if you find a vessel that has the sun or the moon or a dragon, then you have to destroy it. That means only the image of a dragon. But if it has a face of a human, you don't have to destroy it. So we can't. If it's talking about finding something, then we can't understand the middle clause. Rather, you know what? It must be that this whole statement of Rav Sheshat is talking about someone who makes a figure. And that would explain the middle one, that says that you cannot make something with a human face, because that's what Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, says. We're going to see his full derasha on the next daf. But he says, Lo ta'asun iti, when it says in the Ten Commandments, do not make with me other gods and so on, he reads it as Lo ta'asun oti. Do not make an image of me. How could you make an image of God? By creating an image of a human being who is B'Tselem Elokim. And so that includes a prohibition against making a human form. So there you go. We can say that this follows Rav Huna Bered Rav Yoshua, and the middle clause, in fact, is talking about making a human form. Okay, so now if the whole statement of Rav Sheshat is talking about creating something, that would explain the middle clause. The last clause says that all images are permitted except for a dragon. Surat Derakon mi asir v'kativ lo tasun iti Elohe chesed ve'Elohe zahav. If it's talking about creating something, is there a prohibition in drawing a dragon? The pasuk says, "Do not make with me gods of silver or of gold." Hanein to Surat Derakon la. And so in the pasuk, in the continuation, it says anything that's in the heavenly constellations. So those are included in the prohibition. But a dragon is not mentioned in that pasuk. So therefore, you should be permitted to draw a dragon. So if the whole statement that Rav is talking about drawing something, then how come it says a dragon's not allowed? Ela peshita b'moseh u'chiditnan amoseh kelim v'alehem surat chama. Rather, this clause must be talking about something that you find. You find something with a dragon on it, then you have to destroy it. You can, interestingly, you can draw a dragon, but if you find something with a dragon on it, then you have to destroy it. As the Mishnah taught, if you find a vessel that has on it a sun or moon and dragon, then you have to destroy it. Okay, so the sefa must be something that you find. Now, what are we left with? Resha v'sefa b'moseh, mesiata b'moseh, mesiata be'oseh. The Resha and the Sefa, the first clause and the last clause, those are talking about things that you find. You find something with the sun or moon, and the last clause was with a dragon, then you have to destroy it. But the middle clause regarding a human face, that if you find it, it's okay. You just can't, but you can't make it. But are we going to read Rav Sheshat's statement so inconsistently that the first and last are talking about finding things, and the middle clause is about making things? Abaye says, yes, we can explain it that way. After all, Rav Sheshat was summarizing all of his findings from different baraitot, and so he's summarizing it in this way, and he's including in his summary multiple different types of laws. And you have to know that, when you explain this baraita to your student, this statement of Rav Sheshat to your students, you'll say, this is Moseh, this is Oseh. Rava Amar Kula b'Moseh. Rava says, no, I don't like that answer. We can explain the entire baraita is talking about if you find something Umesiata Rabbi Yehuda, and the middle clause that you had a problem with a human face, and you said, what, if you find a human face, it doesn't say you have to destroy it in the Mishnah, so why does it say you have to destroy a human? Why would you have to destroy a human face? Oh, this statement of Rav Sheshet is following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda mosif af temut menika v'sad apis, menika al shem Chava shemenika kol ha'olam kulo, v'sad apis al shem Yosef shesad umefis et kol ha'olam kulo, vehu denakit giriva v'ka kayil, v'hi denakta ben v'ka menika. And a Braita, Rabbi Yehuda adds to the things that one has to destroy if you find a figure like this. Also, if you see a figure of a nursing woman or sad apis. A nursing woman, what's wrong with that? Because they would draw an image of Hava, who nurses, gives life to all of the world, and so people would draw this image and consider it to be Hava, and they would worship it, and therefore that's prohibited. I wonder if this is the source of so many drawings of Madonna con Bambino that you see all over in every museum in Italy. Maybe originally came from this type of Avoda Zara drawing. It could be that it's also originally, before that, related to Dionysus, which was also depicted in a similar way. So that would be a type of a human face that is prohibited. And the other one is sad apis, here Serapis, crowned with a grain measure. This is an Egyptian god. Ancient Egypt and in ancient Greece, this was worshipped, and so it also looks like a face. And this was worshipped in memory of Yosef, who he ruled over the whole world, umefis, and he appeased the entire world. We're making a derasha on the original name of this idol, and so he appeased the whole world by distributing grain. But this figure of Sarapis is only forbidden if it's holding a dry measure and measuring with it. And the figure of a nursing woman is only forbidden when she's holding the child and nursing it, because that's the way they would draw it when they were worshiping it as an idol. And therefore, if you find, even if you don't make it, if you find an item like this, according to the Yehuda, you have to take it to the Dead Sea and destroy it. And so Rav Sheshet was following this opinion, and therefore we can understand all three clauses in the statement of Rav Sheshet to talk about finding an item, and that if you find an item with such a drawing, then one must destroy it. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.